My name is Ashish Kothari. I work with an organization called Kalpavriksh in India and with the global Tapestry of alternatives. These two sessions are trying to bring back the original meaning of democracy and to see what is its potential, what is already happening towards that on the ground, and what is that potential. We know that with electoral politics, sometimes you can get a good party in power, but basically electoral politics has degenerated into slanging matches. People basically shouting slogans at each other, telling each other, "You're corrupt. We are not corrupt. You are the one who's messed up the country. We will solve it, save it, etc., etc." But it's not really about substantive issues. If you look at the debates in the United States and in India, it's really nobody's really talking about the livelihoods crisis, the ecological crisis, the climate crisis, the inequality crisis, the crisis of livelihoods for billions of people. All of that. That's hardly on the political electoral agenda. But people are really talking about how your party is bad and mine will be saving the world. So we want to move beyond that. We want to actually show that there is a politics, there is a democracy, there is a relationship of power that can be about actually the substantive issues. It can be actually about transforming the world, regions, peoples, countries towards more equity, more justice, more ecological sustainability, dealing with the various different crises that we have. We also have the problem that while we can blame political parties and bureaucrats and corporations and capitalism and so on, which we must put the blame, of course, on these structures and of oppression and power. We also have the crises that a very large section of the world's population has also kind of tended to think in that direction. If Trump is still popular in the United States, or if Mr. Modi comes back to power in India, it's not only because they are brainwashing us, it's also because a lot of our population is brainwashed or willing to be brainwashed. Is kind of thinking that, yeah, this is the way to go. A strong man somewhere in the central power will solve our problems. That's really the kind of, unfortunately, what a lot of people have also kind of bought into. So our challenges are not just about those who are in power. Our challenges are also about a large section of our own people who have kind of drifted or tended or been brainwashed into kind of thinking like that. So how do we use our collective powers and what we are thinking, what we are doing on the ground to try and convince people that no, there is another form of politics that could be much more progressive and meet everybody's needs. One of the other issues that I think we will be dealing with, all the speakers, and also again in the afternoon, is as we argue for radical political democracy and our own powers on the ground, what is our relationship with the state? Eventually, many of us might want the state to wither away, to use Marx's famous words, or the state not to be there at all. And some of our speakers will talk about how they're trying to practice stateless democracy. But right now, the state exists. It is there. So how do we actually negotiate this space with, what is our relationship with the nation state right now? That's also something that will come up in the discussions. And I think we'll also be hearing about some key elements of radical democracy, the right to participate, the capacities to participate. In India, for instance, we have, we call them reservations, where 50% of the institutions are supposed to be reserved for, the seats are supposed to be reserved for women. But for hundreds of years of patriarchy, women will come and sit there and not be able to speak. So how do we build capacities also for people to actually be able to voice their opinions at whatever levels they are? How do we create the forums of the accessible forums? You might have a public hearing for a decision making, but it might be 100 miles away. So how do people actually access that? So where are the forums for participation? And the most important element of a radical democracy would be maturity or wisdom. Instead of saying we are the majority, we will take decisions, how do we also think about the minorities, religious minorities, class minorities, gender minorities also, right? So it doesn't become a majoritarianism kind of a democracy. How do we think beyond the human? How does democracy include a voice for other species? These are key elements that are emerging from the practices on the ground, and more, I think we will actually be able to discuss them. How do we even question or ask questions about current political boundaries? Like here, we're in South Asia right now. South Asia is divided into 6 or 7 countries, partly for pre-colonial reasons, partly for colonial, for what the colonial powers did to us, right? So how do we, and because of that, our rivers are blocked by political boundaries. Our nomadic populations and wildlife was not able to move back and forth because there's a fence and an army on both sides, between Tibet and Ladakh, for instance, or between India and Pakistan. So how do we think beyond these nation state boundaries also to think of more biological, cultural relationships and flows? Does that also become part of radical democracy, and how do we sort of conceive that? We have a session on that also on the 18th, which we'll announce later on. So basically, I think today's session is, both the sessions will hopefully deal with many of these topics. In 3 hours, we cannot do justice to all of these, but we want to begin the conversations and then from here sort of carry them forward. All right. Okay. So let's move on. We're going to hear some fantastic experiences from the ground, from people who are actually practicing them or those who have experienced some of those practices, because we don't necessarily have people from all of these places. We're going to start with very, very appropriately with the Kurdish movement, because yesterday was, as you would have seen maybe in the rally, some of our friends holding up flags. Yesterday was the 25th anniversary or the morning of the kidnapping and the capture of Abdullah Öcalan. They will speak more about that. And there are a series of demonstrations and actions taking place all over the world to commemorate that, but also to ask for the freedom of Abdullah Öcalan, who is still in prison in a Kurdish, in a solitary confinement in a Kurdish island, in a Turkish island. So let's hear first from the Kurdish movement. We have Neshibe and Rohash, who will tell us about practices on the ground, concepts, and what's happening right now. You want to start? I think this is for the Zoom. So.
Okay, thanks so much. I'm Najiba Qardaghi. I'm from Kurdish Women Movement, and particularly I work with the Jineoloji Academy. Jineology is a women's science. We started to working on the science after when proposed by leader Abdullah Öcalan in 2008 in his prison writing, freedom, sociology of a freedom. So mainly we focusing on developing science around women that have been shaped our society thousands of years before, and we try to bring it in a life. And in the same time, we work with a lot of different spaces, different feminist movements, and also social movements to exchange our knowledge, and in the same time to provide real sources of the knowledge, which is have a distance with the knowledge that have been daily produced by the state and patriarchal mindset. So this is what we focus in our work in Jineoloji Academy. To talking about radical democracy, I will referring to one speech from Noam Chomsky when he said that we live in an age that democracy is been in a situation that is rotten democracy.
Can you stand and say?
Ah, it's louder. Okay. So, we actually when we talk about radical democracy, it's meaning that the meaning of the democracy, content of the democracy that we are familiar with a election and representing by parliament, this is mainly not working anymore. It's not a functional anymore in this century. So actually, it's not a functional totally, because we are living in an age that mostly the security forces, the security agency, and also the company of weapon and the competition of the how controlling the different area of this world is really, we face every day this situation. In Kurdistan, in Palestine, in Ukraine, in everywhere in the world, there is a war is visible, but in fact, when we talk about radical democracy, also there is a war is invisible, actually invisible. And this war started 5,000, 6,000 years before. And this war is actually not, has a no name, and invisible is a war that arose in the result of erasing patriarchy, nation state, city state. And in the same time, we are living in an age that's a neoliberalism entering every space of our life. And this war is started when the patriarchy raised and enslaved in the character of the women all society, and the minority now ruling all over the world. When David Graeber said that we are 99, actually we are the people 99 ruling by 1% in the world. Companies, hegemonic powers, and now we are actually in the age that we have to raising more question about what we have to do. And actually more than this, our leader Abdullah Öcalan 50 years before started, how should we live, not how should we do, how should we live, because this turning the life from the between the like individuals in a society 5,000 years before, the social relation in a society, when turned to the power relation, all the dynamic of the life is changed. And the subjectivity and objectivity and ruling the majority of the society by minority, and this disconnection between the human being and the nature, between men and women. Exactly this war that started 5,000 years before, by turning this social relation to the power relation, actually we have to go there. And this is Öcalan named it regime of truth, how we can search our truth in the history. When we talk about when we talk about democracy, always we're referring to Greek ancient time when we defining democracy. And this concepting of democracy is actually illusion, like there is an illusion of the definition of democracy, because real democracy actually existed in a natural society 12,000 years before, even not just in the Middle East, in the northern Mesopotamia, even in the all your society. In everywhere, when you make a research, you find the evidence, you find even it's alive, still exists of our life. This ethic and a political society still exists of our life. So when we as a Jineoloji Academy, when we research about when we're referring to the radical democracy, to that time, to like 12,000 years before, we see that we don't know, we don't find any evidence that the human being have been killed in a result of a violence. All the clans, the society lived in a peace, lived in a system of justice, lived in without distinction, without oppression. So after the raising of patriarchy, this radical democracy, this roots of radical democracy have been destroyed. So this is very important to know. When we are referring to that time, we have to know in the same time that we lose a lot of values. So mainly our leader Abdullah Öcalan saying, if we don't enlighten the truth of a woman, the naturality of the society is remain in a darkness. So to enlighten the society, enlighten the human being, enlighten the nowadays, we have to go to there to know what's have been destroyed, what have been actually occupied, have been colonized. So we need actually to enlighten this truth of a woman, because woman is not just a biological, is not a sexual, just a sexual being. Woman is a social being, is a historical being, is a cultural being, is an ethical being. So to know the roots of a radical democracy, we cannot talk about the liberation of a woman. It's exactly the liberation of life. So to liberating life, actually we have to know how women have been colonized, how be slaved, by raising this mentality of patriarchy, and later developed to the hierarchy, later developed to the city-state in the southern Mesopotamia. And this model of a city-state, how is separate all over the world. In everywhere we see this pyramid system, that the gods in the top and the slaves is in the ground, and the middle is a priest that always working to legitimizing this colonialism and this slavery of a woman, and in the character of women in the all society. So nowadays, actually, we need to see this. There is a lot of question we have to raise. Are we have a courage to go out of the mentality of the state, the mentality of patriarchy, and we can think? Actually, Öcalan raised very, very important question. Are we have a capacity and we have a ability to go out from the system and to think like a separately from this, like a memory of the state? Because actually this is a fighting between two different memory of the society that has thousands of years, and the memory of the state that have been raised for just 5,000 years. It's not 500 years. And this is sometimes is a different understanding of the colonialism in different part of the world. For example, in South Africa, in Latin America, Abiyala, and even in Mexico, in somewhere else in the world, when we defining colonialism, sometimes the colonialism is defining after the colonialism of the European powers, like England, France, Portuguese, and also Italian, Spain power when invaded a lot of other parts of the world. But the first colonialism, the first colonized, is happening against women. So if we don't referring to that, we cannot find the real truth of life. So this is really very important to know. We can actually discuss about like a lot of different concepts that Öcalan proposed. Öcalan also developed in his theory, but I want just to referring to one part of one of my friend, Nagihan Akarsal, that she have been assassinated in 4 October 2022 in Suleymaniye, in my city in north of Iraq, which is the south of Kurdistan, colonized by Iraqi state. I will just referring to one part of his speech and will stop in my part. Actually, Nagihan Akarsal proposing in the of course under influence of the theory and ideas of Öcalan, to divorce from the system. We need a total divorce from the system. She's saying Total divorce from the system requires memory. Memory means historical consciousness. It is also being aware of your roots. It does not want memory that repeats itself through events and facts, but vivid memory that is reborn every day. So we need really reborn every day. That's we need. Not just repeating what's the system giving to us, but to build our vision, our thoughts, our system, in the same time to every day updating ourselves, every day, and never demanding from the system. Yesterday, what's make me a little bit sad, that's a lot of people shouting for demanding from the system. We should not demanding. We should actually developing our radical system by our own self. But this is not meaning refusing or rejecting the state. We have to build our own vision, our own system, not a state system. So this is very important, and later on we can deepen in our discussion. Thank you.
To complement that and give a rounder picture of the Kurdish movement, especially what's happening on the ground, we have Rohash. Can you also introduce us?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Rohash Shekso. I'm women activities in Congress-Star women movement in North and East Syria. And I would to thank organization to invite me to share my our Kurdish our experience with you. As you know, Rojava, many of you heard about women Rojava, how they struggle, how they build their society. But I'm here today to talk about how we build democratic society and why we say women is important in everywhere in level of the life. If we didn't organize the women, we couldn't organize the organize the society, and we cannot build a democratic society. Because of that, I would like to focus on the women role in our region and how they worked and how they built their organization, and how we can define ourselves against that systems. As you know, I grew up in the very fascist regime system is calling Bas system in Syria, is anti-democratic. They stripped more than 120,000 people from their citizenship, and we couldn't practice our language, our culture. We grow up in this system. But now we are in a situation, we practice and we try to build a democratic systems, and women, they have a main role in this system. Of course, when the Spring Arab, they saying Spring Arab, but we saying National Spring, because every nation in Middle East, they play a role in this spring. When they started from many different countries. But when they came to Syria, and when we start our revolution, of course, we didn't start it 2011. We started before 2011. We was ready for revolution. Yeah, we lived in very difficult situation in North and East Syria. We couldn't speak our language. We couldn't practice our culture. They stripped our citizenship, but we organized ourselves. How we organize ourselves in the systems, in that very difficult situation, we started from women. We say if we organize a woman, means we organize a family. When we organize a family, means we organize a society. And we try to first educate a woman. We entered every house. Of course, it wasn't easy. When we're talking now, every door was open for us. Of course not. We knocked many doors. They didn't accept us. But in the end, they accepted. When we educate a woman, the woman educates the children. And then we educate this society. And when the revolution started, we was ready to build our society in right and in a democratic system. Of course, the ideology we follow, it is like Najiba told it, is Abdullah Öcalan theories, Kurdish leaders now imprisoned in Imrali. The democratic nation theories we practice in our region, and we believed, of course, to practice a system and build a system, you should to believe your ideology. If we can't believe, we can't practice or build the right practice too. And when we started, of course, in the media, everyone say, the Kurdish woman is brave. They fighting against ISIS. No anyone say how they coming in this level. We didn't fight against ISIS. We defend ourselves. We are not army. We are defense unit to defend ourselves against any attacks from outside. Not just we defend ourselves against the outside attack. In same times, we defend ourselves against the systems, that main mentality systems. And to protect women and to build a right systems, we work as a co-chair system. Co-chair system, this is protecting women's things and to build equal society. The co-chair system, men and women, of course, as I told it, we grow up in very difficult system. Because of that, we first try to make some rules to protect, to take the society up, not to bring it down. And how we say should be any woman, when they elected for co-chair system, should be elected by women, not by men. And man cannot vote a woman because the man mentality always they looking for women can follow the man, not to going next each other or to be in same level. We know that very well in state systems. Because of that, we say, shouldn't men vote for women? Women should be elected just by women. And then other thing, we make this system, it is when the man doesn't like, how I can explain, the woman can elected man, but man cannot elected women. Women can say, I can't work this man, but man cannot say that, because the Syrian system or Middle East system general, as we know, it is a state system. They educate this society. on the and there is a religion system too, the affected society. Because of that, we try to research all the situation to build a right society. And of course, the culture system is enough to build a democratic system. The women have a main role? Of course not. Because of that, we built our organization. Our organization, women organization, system of umbrella. Maybe Najiba highlighted. I don't like to repeat because we don't have time. I'm trying just to rush. And this organization, we work, of course, on federal, democratic confederalism systems. We try to build a communal life in northeast Syria. The communal life, free join, and of course, always defense is main point to defense out themselves against any attack and against the system too. And other thing, we of course try to build equal society. And there is other thing we say to build a right or democratic society should be every person in this society to be inside organization, not anyone out of. How? With assembly, a commune, a association, organization, parties, not anyone should be left out of organization. If there is one left out of organization, means there is gap in this society. We are now, I can't say we are perfect. Of course, there is many mistakes, and every day happening mistakes too. But in our system, we learn from our mistakes. How we learn from our mistakes? Criticism, and self-criticism. We using these systems. And when we using these systems and we analyze our practice, we learn from our practice and make our future. We plan we're planning for future from these mistakes. We not just we not just doing and going. No, just we always going and analyze our practice, and then we try to go. And other thing is very important in our systems is education. In all system, our education, like I told it, we moved every family, every house to academy. Not just we educate part of the system. We educate all women's, because we have sometimes we have open education in street. We have in academy. We have in some houses, like bringing neighbors together, and we opening system of education. And not just we educate a woman. No, in same times, in all our system of education, there is some subject important to be a system of education. What is this subjects? Women revolution. I think my time is finished. Maybe we
take 1 minute more.
1 minute. Okay. Now I can say women takes in all level of society life to build this society, and because of system we have built and we try to build, Of course, no any state in the Middle East or around the world accepting this system. Because of that, there is everyday attack in our region. This attack is coming from Turkey. This attack is attacking the democratic confederation systems and women revolution. Because of that, to build a right society, we should to all work together and build a good network between all of us. Thank you. I think my time is finished. In discussion, we can ask.
Thank you. Okay, so we move now from the Kurdish freedom movement to a maybe even slightly older movement for radical democracy and autonomy, probably the most famous in the world so far, which is the Zapatista. We don't have somebody from the Zapatista indigenous communities themselves, but we have two people who have experience from there, and they will give us a glimpse of what's happening there in what is today called Mexico, but they have their own regional names for it.
Thank you very much. My name is Quincy Saul. I was born in the United States, living there, but I've traveled a lot in Mexico, also Venezuela, other parts of Latin America, and I've been living last 5 years in Sri Lanka. It's an honor to be in Nepal, and it's really an honor to be on this very distinguished panel. I'm wondering how I got here. And I guess it started about 4 or 5 years ago. I met Ashish Kotari online, and so this is the first time we were meeting. And I'm part of a small group called the East Coast Chiapas Solidarity Committee, which for the last couple of years has been accrediting students to travel to study in one of these Zapatista communities. I'm very circumspect, very cautious to speak about the Zapatistas because there is a whole, they speak for themselves very clearly. Is anybody not familiar with the Zapatistas? First time you're hearing about them? Is anybody? Okay, first time. Okay, so that's good, but most have heard before. Well, it's an honor to be able to share a bit. The Zapatistas have been very critical and very vocal, criticizing people who have made careers off of interpreting the Zapatistas for them. So makes me very cautious to say things, but I will do my best. The reason they're called the Zapatistas goes back to the Mexican Revolution in 1910. One of the leaders was Emiliano Zapata. And the neo-Zapatistas, the ones today, see their struggle as a continuation of the Mexican Revolution that was unfinished, whose main slogan was Tierra y Libertad, land and liberty. So where is this? This is in the southernmost state of Mexico, on the border with Guatemala, in a state called Chiapas. It is the richest state in terms of mineral and hydropower, everything. It's the richest state, but it's also the most poor state in terms of the condition of the people. This is probably a very familiar situation in other countries around the world. The most rich places are the most poor places because of the system. It's a very small group. These are indigenous people, Mayan people. They speak Tzotzil, Toholobal, a few other languages. Those are the two ones I've been more familiar with. It's a small group. We are in Asia, so we must say this is relatively a small group. It's only a couple 10,000, few tens of thousands of people involved, but they have had a massive impact all around the world through so many creative campaigns I can't even begin to list. Everything from an electoral campaign where they weren't seeking office, to a science conference, to a women's conference. Almost every couple of years there is a new big initiative by the Zapatistas. They have some autonomous communities. So what that means practically, without giving my interpretation, is they have their own hospitals, their own law courts, their own electoral system of self-government, and their own cultural, economic institutions. I'll just jump sort of to the end. I want to be very brief. In 2006, they launched a new initiative called the Sixth, La Sexta, the Sixth Declaration, after many previous declarations. And they made, they sort of opened the door to global solidarity. They said the indigenous people of the world cannot achieve our objectives alone. We must join forces with the workers and the students and the farmers all around the country. And since that time, there has been a constant dialogue in Mexico and around the world of people coming to exchange information. They are very careful about sending delegates anywhere because they're very aware of the risks of delegating power. And this comes from their thousands of years of cultural traditions of democracy inside these Mayan communities. I think I'm just going to be quite brief. I think it's not a coincidence that we are discussing here the Kurds and the Zapatistas together. If there is a compass of revolution in the world today, these I think are some like the North and the South poles that people around the world orient with. And it's not just a theoretical connection. The last time I was down there was 2017. I met a Kurdish freedom activist, Azize Aslan, maybe you know, and she was making a mural of the solidarity of Kurdish and Zapatistas in one of these communities. So this is a very exciting global solidarity movement. Both of these movements have opened the doors to solidarity with all kinds of people around the world. And I think that the genius, if I may, of this movement has been to take a very particular circumstance, that's very unique conditions that they're living in, just like in Kurdistan, but they have found in these very particular unique circumstances the universal principles that unite all humanity, and they have expressed their particular struggle in a universal form. And this has enabled them to interact and exchange with a global movement. So I think I will be very brief and stop. But again, Quincy Saul, I'm part of the Eco-Socialist International. I look very much forward to building a dialogue with all of you here and talking after this. Thank you.
So my name is Lau Kin Chi. I'm with the group of Global University for Sustainability. And you see our members here doing all this, the Zoom and also the videoing. Actually on Rojava, we had a series of lectures, of 10 lectures that we had worked together with our friends, and we have put all the lectures that were videoed on Zoom in English and in Kurdish on the Global University website. And Ashish also was present once as a respondent to one of the lectures. And on Mexico, on the Zapatistas, we actually also had one series of 7 lectures, but then that was not about the Zapatistas. It was about the conditions that made the Zapatista movement possible. So we went back to the 1950s to the 1970s when the liberation theologists were there with the Bishop Ruiz. And so we invited 2 persons who were there with the bishop working in the communities on the ideas of liberation theology. So that series was called Experiences with Indigenous Communities in Chiapas. So then they told us especially about how there were all the mobilizations within Chiapas leading to the 1974 Indigenous Congress, which was a huge success. So you can see all the documentation and videos over there. By the way, the series on Rojava was called Rojava Resistance, Resilience, and Renewal. Yes. So you could just scan the QR code and go to the website and watch all these videos. So on the Zapatistas, actually, starting from 2003, Professor Wen and Professor Dai and actually a whole group, and I think with Kin Cheng here and Xiao Hui here, we have been to the Chiapas, and together with Claudia, who's from Mexico, and she's been our guide and interpreter for many of these as trips. So and after these, then Professor Dai Jinhua and myself, we co-authored one. We translated the Zapatista writings in Chinese, so which is called the Masked Commandant. But so our interest in the Zapatistas, of course, is in not only in the ways it managed to survive all the hostilities of the government, of the state, and of the multinationals who are trying to take resources from Chiapas, but also in the philosophy behind all their organizing. So we had quite a lot of discussions with Gustavo Esteva, who unfortunately passed away during the COVID times. He had COVID and didn't survive it. But then before his passing away, we managed to put together a volume, which is an anthology of his writings. I will bring the book to show to you this afternoon. So together with Gustavo, we were doing quite a few books. So this is one of the books we produced in English and in Spanish. It can be downloaded also from the website. So that is the one that we were trying to invite different people from Chiapas to talk about how they think the experience was important. So for me, the significance, there will be so many aspects to discuss about the Zapatista experience and what we can learn from them. But I think the one phrase that strikes me most is every I is a we. So every I is a we. So we may easily associate this with collectivism. And very often when we think of collectivism, then we think of coercion, because then you have a community where every member would not have personal freedoms, individual freedoms, but then you would be coerced by certain protocols and customs, etc. But then I think the Zapatista experience tells us how this is possible. This is possible not just from an idea, just to say that now we are all one community. This is a we. It's easy to say that. It's so difficult to practice. And I think just now we heard this very beautiful phrase to say that it is the mentality that we have been educated in that has caused us to have all this individualism and egoism and this rejection of community. So when the Zapatistas say every I is a we, then they are building on their traditional practices of relating to each other and of how they could be having these social relations instead of power relations, as you beautifully put it. And I think together with this, then there's of course the Marcos's famous motto of command by obeying. That we need command sometimes, which means certain coordination, but then we obey the communities. Of course, many of us from the Marxist background would instantly think of this democratic centralism. That you voice your views, but then the minority will obey the decisions of the majority, while the minority in action obeys, but then they still retain the right to voice their different opinions. That's the famous democratic centralism. And of course, with that, then we always think of a Leninist vanguardism. So I think in some ways, the Zapatista experience teaches us ways of rejecting any hierarchical imposition from above. So they are based on the communities. And this is, and I think the good thing is that they had, despite the 500 years of colonialism, they have retained quite a lot of their own traditional practices. So the more remote they were, I think the better they have come out in terms of the rejection of so-called modernization and modernism. So I think in their practice, we can see, I think one of the successful achievements of the Zapatistas is their building the caracals. The caracals, they mean the snail. It is the shell where they can go back inside, retreat inside for their own defense, but they can also reach out to others. And I think in practice, they have been doing that. They've been trying to build communities. And what I also appreciate a lot is the very conscious withdrawal of the army's leadership and dominance in the communities. So when they come out to say that we shouldn't have the military wing dominate over the communities, and so they had the communities elect their own representatives to form the leaderships in different levels of the caracals. So I think that is a very important step forward. Because one thing is, although we say that we are all equal, but if you have a neighbor who is armed and I'm not armed. When we quarrel over how to pick the apples from the tree, then he will have his arm. And he has been trained militarily with Kung Fu. So it would be very difficult for me as a neighbor to keep my say, for example. So I think this very conscious withdrawal of the military power from daily life of the communities, it is very important. And so I think if we look at Hamas and Gaza today, Hamas is being branded as a terrorist organization. So any support of Hamas, you might be branded as supporting the terrorists. But then I think for the Zapatistas, it's so difficult for the government to say that they are terrorists. They only fought in the first 12 days of the uprising in 1994. After that, and during that fighting, I think they only a few, less than 10 policemen and army soldiers were killed, whereas there were dozens that were killed during the fight. And after that, they had never really fought with the arms. So you see Marcos always with his is the post with very well armed, as if he's very well armed. But then Professor Dai was saying that one expert from China said that the bullets do not match his gun. The bullets do not match his gun, so that is only for decoration. So it's a kind of drama piece, gadget. So I think it is so important that they insist on no drugs and also not really armed struggle. And so the last point is, while they are trying to build the communities from below on the ground, they were also trying to reach out. So they had this very successful tour to Europe, where they say to Spain, where they say that we do not want an apology from Spain, unlike our government. We want to build reciprocal relationships. So thank you.
First, let me say something about Zapatista. So because of the end of 20th century and the 21st century beginning, we have almost no case of the peasant revolution successful. So Zapatista is a very, very special, successful case. So we organized several times to do the field work in Zapatistan guerrilla movement area. We live inside with them, and we want to do studies on what kind of mechanism they can implement the radical democracy. We found that it's somehow similar as a Chinese Red Army in 1920s. A Chinese Red Army in 1920s set up the local authority with no salary. Zapatistan, they select the community leader to join the local authority with no salary. They bring food from their own community, from their family. 2 weeks, stay in the center, in the headquarters, but they don't have any cost. That is a very interesting phenomenon. And when they organize their guerrilla force, and every community sent one young people, and equal women and female, male and female. So that is the case, make me to think about Nepal Liberation Army. 20 years ago, when I visited the army campus, I met people in local. They said that, especially these female soldiers, and they won't give up the military campus because they said, I only in this troop can have equal rights. Such kind of phenomena not only in Nepal. When you were in North India, when you meet this guerrilla area, the same. In Latin America, in Southeast Asia, in everywhere, you can find that the women, what's their rights? Their rights can be implemented when they join the revolution. That is the same. When China implemented the third land revolution, gave the equal rights to all the peasants no matter female, male, equal rights in land. So to make almost all rural women have their property rights. That is why in China nowadays, still have more than 80% of female employment because of the same rights. So I don't think that this case or this experience can be universally applied, but that is the experience. It's an implemented, practical experience. So I hope people talk about the radical democracy, talk about equal rights. We must pay attention to the 20th century's peasants' rights implementation by the revolution. Okay, that is why I give a little explanation. The second, I also think it's a very important key point, is that you said, American young boy, you said it's rich and poor. The more rich and more poor. More rich natural resources, more poor. Why there is a Zapatista violent fighting? It's because originally they have their land in the terror area, but occupied by transnational company. They were enforced, moved to the mountain area. And then, because of this transnational company believe that 21st century is a kind of 生物产业竞争, how to say that? 生物产业 bio industry competition in the world. So they try to negotiate with local authority to enforce these minorities, these indigenous people from the mountain area out of their village, out of their community, to move more deep jungle area. So that is why they not only lost their land, but also lost their community, to enforce them to move out. That is why they got to join the violent fighting. So I think this, when we talk about the equal rights, we must know what is the so-called globalization. And then we may have more clear picture to understand why there is a Zapatista movement. Thank you. I finished this one. Now turn to my topic. I have how many minutes I have?
4 minutes.
No minutes.
3
3 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Nowadays we have a mass participatory social movements in China in name of rural reconstruction. Just now I said in China the female have the equal rights, even more bigger than male. And if you ask any Chinese family, the husband always tell you that he is a follower. Who is the master? His wife. And if they have a daughter, yeah, sure, daughter is the first. Okay, so that is a very popular phenomenon caused by the women have equal rights to join the employment. And then they have their money. And all the family properties not exactly controlled by male. If any female want to divorce, she can have a maybe large part of the family properties. That is one thing I think is very important. Also, after the land revolution, no matter who is the leader, always need to announce peasants' rights, especially the land rights. Nobody can interfere. It's their rights. So any company, any investments want to go to countryside to set up their business, you must pay the revenue to every household. That is one thing I think is equal rights. If you want to think that's universal applied democracy, first, you need to guarantee the majority. You guarantee them their land rights, their property rights. Nobody can take. That is very important. Second, I think also very important is that you need to set up the self-organization. Organization means that you can strengthen your position to negotiate with any outsider, no matter it's official or investors. So if you have no organization, nobody can protect you. If you're just individual households, you don't have enough power to negotiate with outsiders. So nowadays, China have a big capital. We have many rich people. They're rich enough. They also have a strong power to negotiate with local governments. But anybody, you need to meet these organizations that we think is a village collective. We also set up a lot of cooperatives in countryside. These are cooperatives, these are collectives, representative of the local peasants' household rights. Means that they can have a kind of collective position to negotiate with any outsiders for their property rights. So nowadays, we have a new strategy. Means that in domestic markets drive the economic growth. Originally, China have so many outside market drive economic growth. Now we are trying to turn back to the domestic because now this announced 1.43 billion population have the commonwealth by the common property rights. So that's a big change. So that is why I'm very much emphasize the organization. If you have no rights for self-organization, you cannot protect yourself. You cannot negotiate with outsiders. So that is also very important. The third, you need to have a mass participation. Means that when we carry out our program in countryside, we need to encourage the citizens. Nowadays, the citizens are middle class compared with the rural people. So we need to give some kind of program to urban citizens, especially the middle class, make them to join the rural reconstruction. That we said mass participation for the food system. We mobilize thousands middle class. They organize themselves, or even individual, join the rural reconstruction for themselves, not for the rural people, for themselves, because that you cannot guarantee your food safety by any side, only by yourself. So such kind of mobilization more easier to make the middle class in city join the rural reconstruction movement. So nowadays we have many streams, many different systems in our movements. So the rural reconstruction, and because a kind of big social network in mainland China, you can meet people everywhere. They are in name of rural reconstruction, but we all are volunteers. We don't have a headquarters. We don't have fundraising. We use our own resources. So we said, when people said, you are from rural reconstruction movements, I said, yes, I'm a resource person. I utilize my resources from the official institutes, from the official systems to facilitate the mass movements in countryside. And that is different. I think it's also the radical democracy. Every people can free entry. Every people can free retreat. We don't give any barrel. We don't give a block. We don't block any people. So that means it's also the old experience, unified front line. Okay, we utilize a lot of revolutionary experiences and principles for encourage people join this social network. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And from the experiences from the global south, we move to one set of experiences from the global north. Thomas has just joined us. Thomas, because we're kind of running out of time, so if you can be quick, but he wants to talk about some autonomy movements in the Nordic part of the world.
I'm from Finland. I want to share 3 thoughts with you. One is that we are aware, the activists are aware, but not the population at large, of the role that the EU and Western Europe plays in the global economy of food and food sovereignty and food safety. The European agricultural policy is one of the main engines of land grabbing and colonization of land, not only in the global south, but also in Eastern Europe. Ukraine is an important case, but also including the Western European countries themselves. Family farms have been grabbed and taken over by agribusiness. So this happens in Finland, and it happens all over the planet. And a driver is the European agricultural policy and the European trade policy. And we are fighting that. So that's my number one. My second point is the following. I am part of something called Corporate Europe Observatory. We are monitoring corporate power in the European Union, especially in Brussels. We were founded by environmentalists and democracy and solidarity activists in 1996. I'm a founding member of that. And I can report to you that we have been putting a lot of energy into studying and fighting the corporate lobby, the business lobby in the agricultural sector. And there's many things happening at the moment. There's genetic modified organisms. There's hazardous chemicals. There's pesticides. There's the ban of glyphosate, which is killing bees in Europe and killing the food production system in our continent as well, and everywhere. This winter has been very difficult for us. We've experienced, there have been hard struggles, close votes, and we have lost on all these fronts because of the power of agribusiness and because of the lack of democracy in the European Union. So that is the structural fight we're doing. I'm deeply involved in this. We have a meeting. When I go from here, I go directly to Brussels to strategize, look at the fact that the hard work we did last few years ended in defeat. And we are not alone. We're fighting with many movements in Europe. But we're aware that the role of Europe in this respect is important. And we're struggling at this level of structure to beat agribusiness, to inform our public, and create a public awareness that will remove agribusiness from the heart of power in Brussels and bring back people's power and bring back the search for justice and sovereignty in the food system. I come to my number 3. We do not only fight at that level of structure, we also fight at the level of creating independent space, creating autonomy at the local level. And the Nordic countries, we do have a movement for local self-reliance, for food sovereignty, and that movement stands united with the global south. I come from a small cooperative called Oma Maa. It's a Finnish cooperative. We're very few. We aspire to be 200, but we're less than 200 at the moment. But we have a farm, and rural workers and urban dwellers link to grow the farm together and link this farm, this practice, this cooperative practice to the global movement. So we are part of Via Campesina. We are the Via Campesina member in Finland. So that's one aspect we have. But we also have a more radical movement for self-reliance and for autonomy. So we have very important, very inspiring experiments where people move out to the country and live outside the market and outside the state. And this happens in Sweden, it happens in Finland. And I'll give you, so these are inspiring sites where people are struggling to regain control of their lives, of our lives, by cultivating outside the state and the market. In our cold country, it's not so easy. But friends have come down to an annual budget of 30 euros a year. How many rupees are 30 euros? I don't know. But 30 euros a year that's the bottom we have reached. So that is quite some level of sovereignty. And so it is possible, even for us, to build lives which are happy lives with dignity, in which we are not so much part of the forces that are so strong in Europe and which are killing the planet. So we have that. We have villages that struggle to regain. Because 100 years ago, in our Nordic area, people were living in villages with self-reliance. So we're striving. There's a movement to bring that back. We are a few thousand. The collectives are a few hundred. It's not a mass movement, But it's very, very important and inspiring that we have this movement, and we show that food sovereignty and dignity can be combined even in our part of the world. So that was my third point. I'm happy to be here with you. Sorry for coming late, but thank you so much.
We were also hoping to have somebody from Nepal to talk about the situation here. Usha, you have somebody? Okay.
I'm Usha Titiksu. I'm an activist, and at present, I'm known as the president of REDWeb. Because it's a self-declared position, because to deconstruct the power, right? So that's my way of deconstruction of the power, right? Because many people are fighting for the power and the state benefit. So that's the kind of reflection of the Nepal's political situation. And I was very much actively associated with the peace process of 10 years armed conflict. And I am from Marxist school. And right now, I have to rethink about the idea of Marxism and the Maoism in Nepali context. And Zapatista movement was quite known in Nepal in various contexts. So maybe we'll discuss later. Or very briefly about Nepal right now, the victory of People's War, of course, it's a victory because we thrown the monarchy. And now Nepal is secular federal republic country. I have to focus secularism because secularism became very under threatening because of the India especially and the global religious politics. And we are having a session on 18th about secularism in Birkuti Mandap. So I welcome you all. Right now, the Maoist party is in government with the coalition with Nepali Congress and some other reactionist parties. So after the victory of Nepal's war, now what we got it, right? That's the main point in a state level. And from the people's level, from the ground level, what we got it. And what are our fightings when we are talking about the socialism or communism and also the radical life and the change in our life? Maybe it's really important of this session in this WSF process. And in a way, WSF process is also the hijacked by the World Bank's project partner. And that is also, we really need to have a very much open discussion. And it's very important I should share about what happened in yesterday while the opening ceremony was going on. Thomas and you, Professor, were in the stage. And behind the stage, there was a banner and the booth of USAID. And USAID is the theoretically against the World Social Forum process. And when the issue came there, and silently, the banner was left out and the booth was left out, kicked out. But World Bank's partner was in the stage, right, as a project. So this is very important topic which we really need to discuss in our process. I request, so how the World Bank, ADB and IMF is able to control the government, not only the Nepali government, the whole idea of state and the government. At the same time, we are fighting against those systems. So this is the one of the very most crucial point where we are. And in the name of global warming and climate justice, other issues become left out also, right? Now people all are talking about the global justice and the climate justice or global warming. But what are the other agenda politically, socially, how we are going to deal, right? So that's all I think.
Just a couple of minutes on the Indian situation and then we break, and we hope all of you are coming back after lunch. So in the Indian situation, we were actually again hoping that some of our Adivasi or indigenous people were here to share, but they're not here. So just to share here that maybe just a story of a single village and then how that is spreading now into many other parts of the country. In central India, there's a single village called Mendalekha who about 35 years back or 40 years back were part of a anti-dam resistance movement, a very large movement which stopped two very large hydroelectricity projects. But in the process, they also self-organized and started saying that how do we organize ourselves to take decisions in our own village in a way that is we assert our right and our democratic claims vis-a-vis the state, but also internally we struggle to make sure that everybody has a voice. including women who, even in Adivasi societies, indigenous societies, often did not take part in political decision making. So that time they reorganized themselves, they created their own village assemblies, and they declared that while we elect the government in New Delhi, in our village, we are the government. All decisions will be taken by our village assembly and not by anybody else. And we will also make the government, insofar as it is there, accountable to do things in the way that we want them to be done. From that one experience, and then after about, they also set up what they call study circles, because they want to study any subject before the village assembly takes a decision, kind of similar to your education, your academies. So it's only after all the information has come to the village assembly that they actually take an informed decision. And they will not take a decision even if one person is objecting to it. So it took them 12 years to take a decision to commonize all their lands. So all the private property of the village was made into village commons. So there's not a single inch of private property in that village anymore. Learning from their experience, another 90 villages over the last 10 years or so have set up a federation, what they call a Mahagram Sabha, that is a federation of village assemblies, to again try and assert their own control over their territory, stop mining proposals that the government is bringing in, but also try and create more democratic self-governance, more equal voice for all sections of society, trying to create a system, try and influence the education system in a way that it is not only coming from outside, but also their own local customs, languages, traditions are also built into the education system, and a whole bunch of other sort of attempts at trying to create relative autonomy and self-governance in that larger landscape. Learning from that, in other parts of India also now there are people trying to sort of struggle with regard to having equal rights vis-a-vis the state. Some are rejecting the state, some are saying, no, we will negotiate with, we accept the state, but we'll negotiate with it. So there are different variations and a whole range of democracy movements also in the country. We are 1.4 billion people, so to talk about 1.4 billion people in 4 minutes is very difficult. But I think Professor Wen and we have, with half the world, have tried to give a little bit of a glimpse of what's happening there in terms of negotiating, in terms of trying to create at least some space for our own decision-making process in the most important things of life: food, water, energy, housing, democratic decision-making, gender relationships, and many other things.